Welcome to the State of Calamity show. Let's talk about addiction, also perhaps known as affliction by some, with a special emphasis on my very favorite addiction, coffee, also known as caffeine induced in beverage form. Also, let's discuss the opportunity for a much needed personal reboot for all of us. And let's touch on the new normal. First of all, let's define the word addiction from a very credible source that I will cite, Wikipedia. Addiction is a brain disorder characterized by compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite adverse consequences. Sounds pretty scary, doesn't it? Well, in reflection on addiction, I must admit, I find that I'm inflicted with many addictions, at least more than one or two. One of my biggest addictions, I will admit to you now, involves caffeine, and specifically caffeine that is served by Starbucks. Many people share the same addiction, I believe. In fact, Starbucks has a $74 billion market cap. That's a lot of caffeine moving around the world. Speaking of coffee companies and addiction, quick detour. I should mention a company called Luckin Coffee Inc., stock symbol LK. Not sure you want to buy this one. It's an emerging brand that was recommended by Motley Fools a few days ago. It was worth a few $1 billion market cap, but it dropped to just over 1 billion, about 75% since that recommendation. In fact, I believe the same or the next day. Well, it turned out their COO fabricated 2019 sales, allegedly, I must say, by $310 million, allegedly. So I had an order in to buy that stock, LK, Luckin Coffee, at around $25 per share, but it never reached that low, and I'm sure lucky because the very next day it opened over 75% down, dropping all the way to $4.90 per share. But let's get back on topic. Sorry for the detour. We're talking about addiction. Well, the current lockdown has resulted in the closure of Starbucks in much of the world. And I say lockdown resulting from, as you all know, coronavirus, COVID-19. Most Starbucks are closed, as well as their competitors, such as Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, and all of the variety of local coffee houses as well. So I was forced to make my way through convenience stores to stock up on pre-made Starbucks drinks in a bottle. Seems like a good alternative. 3 bottles a day, I guess, is equivalent to a 3-shot latte that I'm very used to. And then convenience stores ran out. Well, I tried Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf has a version. Then they ran out of that. Then I went to Nestle. Then they ran out of that. Well, I'm finding that I'm seeming to break this addiction, not needing as much coffee as before, no longer drinking Starbucks every day. And I'm starting to reflect on my daily routine for the last 10 years of going to Starbucks every single day. And I'm starting to wonder, was that an addiction? Am I addicted to Starbucks? What do you think? Are you addicted to Starbucks or Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf or any of the many other fabulous coffee brands throughout the globe? Well, by definition, to be an addiction and not simply an affliction, it's a brain disorder characterized by compulsive engagement. I'd say I have compulsive engagement. I've been to Starbucks every day, I believe, for 10 years, unless I was on an airplane and it wasn't possible to do so. And does it reward stimuli? Yes, it does. It wakes me up, it gets me going, gets me thinking clearly, gets me reflecting, without which I cannot function. But does it have adverse consequences? That's the question we must ask to determine if this is an addiction or not. So I'm going to cite medical news today. Caffeine is a psychoactive substance that occurs naturally in coffee. Manufacturers also include it in many sodas, our favorite sodas, and energy drinks, and many other places as well. While it is socially acceptable to drink coffee, as we all know, research is conflicting about its safety and long term impact. A 2019 study of university students found that people who consume caffeine have a mean intake of around 173 milligrams per day. This is considered moderate caffeine intake. According to many studies, you see what happens when I don't have Starbucks. Moderate intake can promote a variety of health benefits, which is great. So maybe it's not an addiction, including a lower risk of certain cancers. That's great. Brain conditions and liver problems. So coffee can be helpful. Doesn't sound like an addiction so far, more like a habit, a hobby, an affliction. However, caffeine consumption carries several risks. Here we go. Drinking too much can also lead to adverse effects. Therefore, now we're in not the twilight zone, but the zone of addiction. Well, let's talk about the potential health benefits and adverse side effects of caffeine consumption. We're not going to call it caffeine abuse. That would assume it's an addiction, and we're not quite there yet. Adverse effects. Ingesting caffeine in high doses may lead to more harmful effects on health. A 2015 review identified several unwanted side effects of consuming more than 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. Now, personally, I have a quad latte every day of my life, forever. I think that's a lot of grams of coffee. So, unwanted side effects, adverse consequences include the following: a fast heartbeat, feels fast, but I had no coffee, so perhaps that's not related. Just thinking about caffeine has my heart pumping. Anxiety, agitation, restlessness, sleeping problems, and tremors. Okay, so there are some possible adverse consequences. These effects can also be present when people experience caffeine withdrawal. That's where I'm at right now. Therefore, fast heartbeat, anxiety, maybe a little agitation. I do feel agitated. Restlessness, yes, I'm restless. Sleeping problems, I was up till almost 4 a.m. last night. Tremors, not yet. Could be next. Perhaps I'm in caffeine withdrawal. However, previous research has linked even moderate amounts of caffeine to adverse effects on health. Maybe if you're not a quad latte drinker like myself, there could still be some adverse effects, really. In 2013, the results of a large prospective study suggested that consuming 300 milligrams of caffeine a day during pregnancy may increase the risk of having a baby with low birth weight. Now, that might be a triple latte, I believe. A more recent meta-analysis of 17 studies that involved 233,617 participants suggests that drinking 3 to 4 cups of coffee every day may increase the risk of a heart attack in men, but not in women. So 3 to 4 cups of coffee seems like a pretty standard number, or my quad latte might qualify. More research is necessary to confirm whether long-term caffeine consumption is safe and whether it provides benefits or increases the risk of health problems. Now, I don't know who's going to pay for that study, but I don't imagine the coffee companies will be the ones to do that. There is some good news, however. So far, I'm feeling that we've checked off one of the boxes on addiction. A brain disorder, okay, fine, I'll admit that. Characterized by compulsive engagement, yes, every day drinking Starbucks. In rewarding stimuli, yes, it wakes me up and gets me going, despite adverse consequences. Well, it sounds like there certainly are some. But there are benefits too, so let's dig deeper. As well as its stimulating effects, caffeine may provide several health benefits. Okay, good news. Maybe I don't have to quit Starbucks after all. A 2019 review of existing literature found that consuming a moderate amount of caffeine has a protective effect against liver cancer. Okay, well, that's good news. In the same year, a different review of 40 studies found that drinking 2 to 4 cups of coffee every day had links to reduced risks of death from all causes. Wow, that sounds good. Some studies have associated caffeine consumption with positive effects on the brain. Oh, In 2013, a study published in World Journal of Biological Psychiatry, which I've never read, I must admit, suggested that drinking between 2 to 4 cups of coffee a day may reduce suicide risk in adults. So maybe we should be promoting coffee. More research in Nature Journal found that consuming caffeine may boost long-term memory as well. I guess I'm going through withdrawals from caffeine. Other studies have also suggested that caffeine intake may protect against type 2 diabetes, Parkinson's disease, cardiovascular disease, and stroke. I'm conflicted on whether this is an addiction, a habit, or simply an affliction. However, Stephen Meredith, a postdoctoral research fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, told Medical News Today that many people forget that caffeine is a psychoactive substance. This may be due to widespread consumption. Caffeine crosses the blood-brain barrier to stimulate the CNS. CNS, central nervous system. I did that without caffeine. He said, unlike most other psychoactive substances, caffeine use is socially acceptable. And the drug is widely used. Did you notice the word drug? In fact, caffeine is the most commonly used psychoactive substance in the world. Moreover, the vast majority of caffeine consumers use the substance regularly, as do I, without apparent harm. Well, that's good news. These factors likely contribute to the perspective that caffeine is a benign substance that everyone can use without suffering any negative consequences. So it's a bit confusing. I think regarding coffee, it probably should be in moderation, like all things. The anxiety, agitation, restlessness, sleeping problems, and tremors, I suppose I can deal with those. I'm not sure about the issue regarding low birth weight babies with 300 milligrams of caffeine a day during pregnancy, 3 to 4 cups of coffee per day, increasing the risk of heart attack in men, but not in women. So I'm concluding non-pregnant women should drink coffee, but men shouldn't? Or possibly we should go from the quad latte to the 1 or 2 shot latte, or 1 cup of coffee a day or two at the most. So in any case, in my very humble opinion, which is personal and not scientific, I do believe that caffeine does potentially meet the definition of addiction, since it does have potentially adverse consequences. So the State of Calamity show concludes caffeine can be, as is the case self-admittedly for myself, an addiction. However, I'm getting used to no Starbucks. Now, just for the sake of full disclosure, I own no stock in Starbucks. I'm not compensated by Starbucks. I don't believe I've ever even been given a free drink at Starbucks. However, I am a very loyal customer of Starbucks. In fact, I even have a Starbucks credit card and lots of Starbucks points, but all of that is at my own expense. So mentioning their name so often is just underscoring the relevance of the addiction. So one question, let's move on from coffee, or whatever form you might take your caffeine in. It could be 7 Coca-Colas per day. It could be various other types of ways to ingest caffeine, such as tea. What other addictions do we have? Casinos. Losing money seems to qualify as a negative consequence. I would say that qualifies as an addiction, gambling in its general sense. Is it a brain disorder? Well, it's characterized by compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli, pushing the button, hearing the sounds that business psychologists analyze carefully to make sure the sounds pull us in and make us never want to leave, and make us love winning so much that no matter what, even after we've won, we will keep playing until we've lost. Adverse consequences, well, staying at casinos all night long, losing track of time, and leaving with an empty bank account could be considered adverse consequences. I'd say that qualifies. Sugar in excess, bad for your health. I think we can agree on that. Drugs. I think we can all agree that most drugs, when used in excess, are bad for your health. Now, some may feel that certain drugs are not, and certain drugs are, but in excess, most drugs potentially, and I mean possibly prescription as well as non-prescription. recreational drugs, we should say, would be potentially an addiction, depending on what state you live in. In some states, marijuana use is legal, could still be an addiction, as caffeine is legal, sugar's legal, could still be an addiction. In any case, in excess, it seems to cross the boundary of negative consequences. Alcohol, that's the big one here. An estimated 88,000 people, approximately 62,000 men and 26,000 women, die from alcohol related causes annually in America, making alcohol the third leading preventable cause of death in the United States. So that's a pretty striking number there. The first is tobacco. The second is poor diet and physical inactivity. And the third, as mentioned, is alcohol. So there we go. I would say that that certainly falls under the guidelines of what would qualify as an addiction. Tobacco, we just covered, would qualify as an addiction, being obviously the number one cause of death based on decisions made that could avoid that cause of death. Preventable cause category. Death that is under our personal control based on decisions we make. So alcohol, tobacco are there. How about fast food? Unhealthy, weight gain, is that an addiction? Well, I would say that if I eat this and I'm not admitting to or even deciding to whether I will, which will be quite cold once I finish our discussion, arguably, if I eat one of these a day, every day for the next 10 years, I'll probably have some adverse effects. It could possibly qualify as an addiction. However, with coronavirus and that being the only restaurant that's open within the area I'm able to drive to legally at this time based on various checkpoints, not much choice. So it seems that many of these certain areas qualify as addictions. Well, the lockdown, quarantine, travel bans, and whatever you're experiencing wherever you are is probably, and this is the point that I would like to make in the State of Calamity show today, it's probably giving everyone a chance to break their addictions, their afflictions, and even the habits that may be potentially negative. For me, I have cut way back on caffeine. Also, not that I do this often, I've not managed to lose any money in casinos lately because they're all closed. Now, I really don't drink alcohol, but if I wanted to, this would be a hard time to drink alcohol. Why? Bars are closed. People are not in bars. Social distancing and public gatherings are keeping people away from their local watering holes, places of drinking. Alcohol at home, well, lots of store shelves are empty, but I'm sure many of you have large supplies of alcohol on hand at home, perhaps more alcohol in the closet than emergency water supplies in some cases. So I suppose drinking continues, but there's certainly a reduction. It's harder for someone like myself that doesn't have bottles of alcohol and beer stocked up at home. If I wanted to drink, well, there's no bars open, hour-long waits in stores with empty shelves, probably not a very easy time to drink. The point I'm trying to get to here is that with the coronavirus, COVID-19 lockdowns, many addictions, many habits, many hobbies have stopped dead in their tracks, and this presents a bit of an opportunity for us. But first, on a related matter, you may have realized, you may not have realized, and please don't take this as humor. Coronavirus takes out Corona beer. That is a fact. Yes, it's true. Just today, as stated in Fortune magazine, Grupo Modelo, the maker of the Corona beer, which I've tried before, with a positive experience, I may add, and a subsidiary of Anheuser-Busch announced it was halting production and marketing of Corona after the Mexican government ordered all non-essential businesses to close. Meaning beer is non-essential. alcohol is not essential. The shutdown also impacts the production of Modelo and Pacifico beers. So perhaps alcohol addiction is being impacted after all by COVID-19 coronavirus. So a great opportunity to limit your intake of alcohol and to challenge yourself on that addiction or affliction or hobby. Tobacco use is probably not affected that much by COVID-19, but then again, it can be a social habit with many people smoking together at work or at school, hopefully not on playgrounds, although when I was in school, well, let's skip that part. On smoke breaks, there's not so many smoke breaks. I guess that would be a social gathering, going outside and smoking with your coworkers. Well, most people are working at home now, so that kind of changes the game there a bit. So maybe the coronavirus lockdown and quarantines and various types of limitations on what we're able to do has reduced the volume of tobacco inhalation globally. So perhaps we can see all of this despite all of the horrible negative things going on, which I do not mean to make light of. We're going through an agonizing period of this pandemic and the world's history that will never be forgotten. But perhaps to find a silver lining, if there is one, is to look at this as a reboot, a fresh start, a chance to redefine our habits, our hobbies, and even our addictions, those that are bad or at least that carry potential negative consequences, and those that are good, such as walking the dogs or the cats, people do that now, going to the gym, reading a book rather than a cell phone. In this time of great crisis, suffering, and death around the globe, everywhere we look, bad news, bad news, bad news, the time that will most perhaps impact the future of humanity and how we structure our return to the new normalcy is very significant at this time. It's as if the world has come to a standstill. I recently rewatched the very first Twilight Zone episode ever made. I forget the year. I think it might have been 1938. I'm going through caffeine withdrawals. My memory's a bit cloudy. The very first episode, when a man walks through a town with nobody in it, looking and searching and finding nobody other than mannequins. And it has a twist to the end I won't ruin for you. But in watching that episode, I feel sometimes as though that's where we're at, empty streets and empty businesses and empty shelves and not really interacting with people. In any case, this is a time when we're redefining the new normalcy. How will we restructure our return to our routine once the pandemic subsides, which hopefully will be not much longer? Whatever that may be like, we have to seek to find some goodness in the endless stream of bad news. Let's see this as a chance to redefine our priorities, our habits, our routines, and even our addictions. I do believe the new normal will be a bit different. Perhaps not as easy to enter foreign nations. Health screenings or medical certificates may become the new normal requirement to enter countries. I think every country will be a bit careful in the beginning at least, and possibly for some time thereafter. Working from home could emerge as a core element of our global workforce. Large gatherings may be more regulated and limited. Social norms regarding wearing masks when sick, coughing and sneezing, behaviors like that. Focus on hygiene, such as proper hand washing and not touching your face all the time. And new retail products catering to a society filled with fear over germs, germophobia. I think we've all caught that. I sure have. I'm seeing and feeling germs everywhere all the time now. All of these may emerge. That plus the unexpected that only the future will tell. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I encourage you to utilize this time to reflect, to learn, and to improve. And for those of you risking your lives as frontliners in this war against this invisible enemy we call the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, our thoughts are with you. Your heroism will not be forgotten. Nurses, doctors, hospital staff, police officers, and all the others that are putting their wellness, their health, their safety, and even their families at risk. Transit drivers, with everybody coughing, and a transit driver, after complaining about passengers coughing without masks on his bus in New York, I believe, just died of coronavirus in the last few days. Tragic. I've heard that 10% or more, I think the number may be 12%, of New York Police Department officers are out sick. I'm assuming the majority that's related to the virus. So all of you risking your lives during these times, you know who you are. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all you are doing. You will never be forgotten. You are heroes. You are heroes wherever in the world you may be. In closing, I would say that this is such an amazing opportunity as we reflect independently in our own homes, in our own environments, on what we do each day in our routines. It's a chance to redefine ourselves, to redefine our habits, to redefine our routines, to break addictions that might be damaging, to find new ways forward, to find different paths, to redefine our goals, and to come out of this really reborn in a restructured reentry into normalcy that at this point humanity globally has the opportunity to shape in a very, very positive way. Thank you so very much for joining the State of Calamity show. Stay safe, stay well, stay connected, and don't forget to subscribe for updates on future episodes. Thank you for joining. God bless.